Hey, I'm in my easy chair. Um, Getting ready to talk to you about developmental processes related to culture. It's week two, and hopefully by the end of this little short discussion, you'll understand cultural influences on developmental processes, but not in depth. We're not going into the neuroscience. You'll be able to identify examples of cultural variations in the cognitive, social, and emotional range of development, and probably recognize the importance of cultural context, hopefully, actually, in developmental research and practice. And again, this is a short little straight to the point thing. We're not going to get heavily involved in a lot of detail here. So, to begin with, is development can be viewed in different ways. This isn't developmental psychology, it's cultural psychology, but this is an offshoot of it. Development is. It happens because of culture, so it's shaped by culture. There was a statement made, I don't know who did it. Development does not happen in a vacuum. It happens in a cultural context, and that's probably the smartest thing ever said about culture. Development is universal, but it's also cultural specific. So there's shared things, there's cultural specific things, and there's a wider range. Epigenetic, I'm not going to get into that wording, but basically it's internal and external related to culture. Universally and culturally specific. Universally specific and culturally specific. What does culture do? We talked about the definition in week one. It shapes how you think. It shapes how you feel. Shapes how you behave from infancy until adulthood and even to the end of life. So define it a little better in terms of what it is, and I'm talking about culture here. Again, some of this you've heard before in week one. A system of shared beliefs, values, norms, that troublesome word, and behaviors. All of the biggies that you see that come from the inside and are projected on the outside. External, for example, customs, languages. Internal, belief systems, worldview. That's a biggie. How do you view what's going on politically and otherwise? Religiously, right and wrong. Who's right? Whose religion is right? Whose religion is wrong? Well, that's a whole course. And who's to determine that? We got a determinate factor at play here at Carolina University. Culture is learned. It's transmitted across generations, and it's dynamic. What does that mean? It doesn't sit still. It changes. One thing about humanity that's common is the commonness of change. Cultural practices influence things like caregiving, education, socialization. Socialization, what does that mean? Trying to fit in, trying to be accepted by those in your culture. Involve a lot of things, simple things. Children in Japan, for example, when they're infants, they sleep with the mom and dad. Where do they sleep in America? In a crib, if that's available. It's not always available, but that's the commonplace idea. So let's look at some domains. Developmental domains related to culture. There's a guy named Lev Vygotsky. Cognitive development, according to him, is shaped by social and cultural tools. I don't have time to talk to you about the tools. Children learn through guided participation and scaffolding. What he says in his theory is that if we sit down, we put two children in the same room, and we're teaching them the same thing. Or we want them to learn the same thing, I should say. If we help one to learn whatever this activity is, that child probably is going to learn it quicker than the child left to his own methods of learning. He, she, we're using it generically. So that's what scaffolding is. Scaffolding related to guided participation is Lev Vygotsky's little deal. He answered Jean Piaget's social cultural theory about development by saying that very thing. Okay, fine, yeah, they'll learn on their own, but if you help them, they'll learn more quickly. Let's jump into parenting styles, social and emotional development. Where do you learn that from? You learn it from whoever your parent is. Notice it's not always mom and dad. A parent can be anyone who is your primary caregiver. So if it's Uncle Ned or Martha down the street, who you spend most of your time with, then that's who you're going to imprint, so to speak, on. That's where your learning is going to come from. Parenting styles, there's several. Authoritative versus authoritarian, for example. Permissive, indulgent, permissive, indifferent. I don't want to go into a Thomas and Chess explanation or Baumrind explanation of parenting styles. Let's just say, as an example, if I have an authoritative parent, they're going to teach me that listening is a good thing, that going through a process of determination as to why you misbehaved, etc., as opposed to an authoritarian parent who says you broke the rules, you're grounded for 2 months. No discussion, no reasons given as to why you did it. So this is just an example of social and emotional involvement with development from a cultural standpoint. Collectivist cultures and individualistic cultures like America, for example, is individualistic, are going to have different, majority of the parenting styles are going to be a little bit different than they would be in, say, Germany or Japan. I use Japan because that's an excellent choice. There's a big mixture over there. Americanization has taken place over there over the years since World War II, and it's changed their culture. It's amazing to talk to the old folk. Emotions, emotional expression, regulated, expressed and regulated by different cultures. Germany is known as a stoic culture, no emotion. Great Britain, not as strict stoically as Germany, but emotions are a little more controlled there, or at least the attempt is there. So this again is a developmental process. How do you learn that? Through your upbringing. Give you an example. Collectivist cultures emphasize emotional restraint and harmony. Individualistic cultures value emotional expression. Don't get confused. It's still in our country not necessarily, this is dangerous territory. In general, male crying is not necessarily a highly acceptable thing by some generations. Okay? I hope that qualifies that. If you're a man, you can't cry, that's wrong. Yes, you can. But there's some who would say, well, that's not very manly. Well, what are we talking about? A cultural view of what, quote, manliness is supposed to be. Let's move to another section. Moral development. Oh my goodness gracious alive. Lawrence Kohlberg has a theory about moral development, and you should read it. Wish we had time to go through it. It's amazing, and there's a lot of controversy related to it. Moral reasoning is influenced by culture, cultural values, fairness, loyalty, obedience. Some cultures you better obey. Other cultures, it's okay to break the rules a little bit. Americans, whatever. Lawrence Kohlberg's stages of development, one of the major criticisms of it was its Western bias. he didn't do a very good job of studying and comparing other cultures. So there was a lot of Western bias there. It's probably the main criticism. There's another criticism related to gender, and I won't go into that. Can't think of what was her name? DuPont, or I can't think of the lady's name now. She was a psychologist, and she was all over Kohlberg stuff because of its Western bias related to male being superior. How's that sound? Not as in men are better than women, but there's certain roles. I don't know. Go look it up. You might enjoy it. Loyalty, here's an example. Loyalty to family might outweigh abstract principles of justice. That's a Kohlberg thing. It's okay to misbehave if it's for the betterment of the family or betterment of the culture, as opposed to the way things are done at a particular moment. Implications for research. Implications for research and practice, basically. There's a problem that is universal and historically entrenched. It's called ethnocentrism. What is wrong? What is ethnocentrism? And what is wrong with this? If you're ethnocentristic, you view other cultures and emphasize the differences negatively. How do you do that? You look at their practices as inferior because they're different from yours. And it doesn't matter what it is, what they eat, how they act, what they say, all their behaviors. If they're different, then because they're not what you were raised around, then they're inferior. That's ethnocentrism. Why do I bring it up? Because we're talking about developmental psychology, including research. And if you are biased in research in any way, shape, or form, you need to do something else. Go drive a truck, or go do something that doesn't require that, because you're not going to go anywhere. Once your research is determined to be biased, then your career is ended, and you can't defend it because academicians won't listen to you. So you have to make sure that any research you do, and in this case regarding development, is unbiased. And these are the implications that are stressed more than anything else. When you do an assessment, or if you're a counselor, you do an intervention, you got to account for cultural differences. Let's see if I can give you an example. And now I may be, quote, preaching to the choir here. I'm saying this based on what I'm trained in and what I've seen, more or less. And I'm going to pick on my Hispanic brothers and sisters here, see if this sounds right. It is not really that acceptable for the Hispanic male, particularly if he's the father, to admit to weakness, which is illustrated this way. Dad, you're having trouble. Maybe you should look for some mental health aid. And most likely they would become adamantly against it. Now, again, I apologize to my Hispanic brothers and sisters out there. This is what I was trained in as a counselor, and I've seen that happen. Daddy is the rock of the family, and he doesn't want to come across as weak. Doesn't mean he can't become emotional about things. It just means that if he appears to be weak, it's unacceptable. Even if it's acceptable in some of the other family's eyes, it's not in his own, depending on the age range, right? Okay. Now, email me if you have better information. I'd appreciate it. But that's the research background I have, and that's what I've seen. It's not only Hispanic males, African American males, particularly younger fellas, have a problem with seeking mental health aid. It's just a stigma that comes from somewhere. It's too bad. So we have to account for those cultural differences when we're doing any kind of work, and it also has to be accounted for developmentally. I'm doing research and development. If I were, then I would have to be very in tune with cultural differences. And global multicultural perspectives. Look at how culture is now. My goodness gracious, look at America. And prior to here, Great Britain, everybody from everywhere in Great Britain. It doesn't matter. What a marvelous mix of culture there. And it's that way here. I don't know if it's as pronounced, honestly, but it's that way here. So what's this all about? Culture profoundly shapes all aspects of development. I told you this wasn't a developmental psychology class. Think critically about cultural assumptions. Think about those in terms of the work you're doing here at school, and when you study. Think about the influence of your culture on what you're doing, if it's different from American culture, and think about what American culture is demanding of you related to your culture. It's pretty interesting stuff. And don't think about it negatively. Think about it in a way of interest. All right? See you again.